What's up, horror community? I'm Stock, and today's video, we're going to be talking about one of my favorite good guys in all of horror. I think it's one of the most popular choices for one of the best good guys in all of horror, and that man is Ash Williams from Ash vs. Evil Dead and the original franchise of The Evil Dead. First thing I love about this character is his character arc. So I really like when a character is able to change and grow throughout a series. And when it comes to Evil Dead, counting Ash vs. Evil Dead, you have 3 of the original films: Evil Dead 2, and Army of Darkness, which is the 3rd one, and then you got the whole series. They have Ash vs. Evil Dead, and I really like how Ash changes a lot through each of these things. Like in the first one, he's a lot more quiet, he's a lot more calm of a character. In the second movie, that movie is just so much crazier, and he gets crazier with that. That's actually when you first see him cut off his arm because he's forced to, and replace it with the famous chainsaw arm, which we'll cover a little later. Then you got the 3rd one where he's got kind of this badass type of deal with him. He's a lot more established, more of who he is. And then Ash vs. Evil Dead is just him. That is him. That is the version of him that made me love this character on such greater heights. So you have to have that with a character, especially if I'm gonna put on a thing like saying that he's one of the greatest good guys ever in horror. Gotta have character development. Ash definitely has that. Gotta talk about his comedy. The comedy that he brings to this character of Ash is very unique and very separated from a lot of other characters in horror, a lot of other good guy characters, just characters in general. And when it comes to horror, because he brings this comedy thing to him, not really as much as 1, but as 2 and on, he brings this comedy thing to him. But at the same time, you could take him serious at like any given moment, and I really like that balance. He has so many good one-liners and quotable things that he says throughout the whole franchise. And going off that, talking about that character, talking about how that works for this character to be so funny and goofy, you can't have that without the actor who played him, who was Bruce Campbell. And I think, like I said in my last video about Art the Clown and David Howard Thornton, I think if you don't have Bruce Campbell playing Ash Williams, you can't have this character. I don't think he works nearly as much without that actor and what that unique charm that he brings to Ash. You gotta be a certain level, you gotta be a certain breed to bring that comedy role to a serious, at times, horror character, horror good guy who fights all these deadites, all these zombies, and he does it perfectly. I really don't think anyone else could do that. I know they had the Evil Dead, not Ash, the Evil Dead reboot, but they didn't have Ash in it, so that was fine, and that was actually a really good movie. Gotta rank the Evil Deads one of these days. That's a really good movie, but they didn't have Ash, so if they ever do want to try to remake an Ash version of Evil Dead or a continuation of the show or whatever without him, what I'm getting at, don't think that could happen. Also, I gotta talk about his weapons of choice that to me make him stand out. First, I'll talk about his boomstick, which is the famous line of him saying, "This is my boomstick," in the 3rd movie. One of his most quotable lines ever. Love that gun he has. In the original film, he has like an axe and stuff, which were great. But this is what separates him. This is what makes him so good. And that is his famous, in this pop, he doesn't have it. This is before he had to cut his arm off. But he has the famous chainsaw arm, and that arm is just so awesome. That's so sick. It's such a great touch, because not only does he have to cut off his arm in the 2nd film, but he replaces it with a chainsaw and then goes on to use that chainsaw to kill so many of the deadites. And it's just a completely badass look, and it's just such a great addition to this unique, goofy / badass character. I also really like how in Ash vs. Evil Dead, he could like replace that too with like his robotic hand, and you just got options. You got options there with that missing limb. In a lot of normal cases, someone will get their arm cut off or something, and then that's it. Like they just won't have their arm, or they'll die off from like bleeding out, or they'll just get mauled after. But him, he gets his arm cut off. This guy just keeps trucking. He gets creative with it. He slaps on that freaking chainsaw. It's fantastic. He's just a very rootable good guy. Because I know sometimes in horror, us as horror fans, I know sometimes the good guy you don't even want to cheer for. there's so many cases where you want to root for the villain. Like, you want to root for your Michael Myers, you want to root for your Jason Voorhees over the good characters in each movie or whatever movie. But he makes sure that you, 9 out of 10 times when it comes to horror fans, you're rooting for this guy. You want him to win. You relate to him. You love him. You love what he brings. And you want to see him chop up every single deadite that comes in his path. And he does that. He does that almost every single time. He supplies us with such great kills, such great moments leading up to the kills. And he just has fun with it. And that comes across on the screen every single time. Also, what Ash vs. Evil Dead does, like I said, that's my favorite version of Ash, but I think what that series does really well is it gives you a full look of this character from the original. It kind of gives a look of him from the trauma he went through the losses he went through in the original movie, and he makes a bond. He gets like 2 of his closest friends in throughout that franchise, and you see him step up and make an actual bond with people and save them countless times and grow that family type aspect. And I really love to see that, especially for someone like Ash, because even though the majority of it is comedy, but they still can make you feel emotion at certain points. And I think that was an awesome layer that the show of Ash vs. Evil Dead really brought to you more than the movies did. The show really brings that emotional aspect to the comedy. So just all of that stuff, seeing him make these bonds and these relationships with other people, seeing him fight the Deadites with 2 other people and like be super successful while doing that, just elevated Ash to greater heights for me and made him one of my favorite good guys in horror for sure. I can't stress it enough, but I'm just such a big fan of his character arc from the original on my shirt, this version of him, and the version of him at the end of Ash vs. Evil Dead. It's almost like 2 completely different people, but I'm just such a massive fan of that character growth because that is so important in a character. And they do it with this guy where you think is just this goofy guy, or even in the first one, before he was goofy, I like him a lot now because I look back and appreciate it, but I remember when I was watching Evil Dead for the first time and I was like getting hooked on the series and everyone's hyping up Ash, and I see this first film and I'm just like, I liked him, like he played his part, but like why, like what's like this hype that everyone's like telling me about, like what separates this guy? And I didn't really understand that in the first one, but as I got to 2, I'm like, okay, this is crazy. And then I got to 3, I'm like, okay, now I can see why people love this character. Then I watch Ash vs. Evil Dead, and then I'm just like, okay, I love this character. I understand the hype. I get it now. But like, and I even look back at the original, and I appreciate that version of him because it makes the final version of him so much stronger. I really do think he's one of the best good guys in horror. He's up there for me for sure. I don't have him higher than like my Dr. Loomis's, than my Dewey's from Scream, but he definitely has his place up there. Just everything about this character, from his look, from like the brown pants, the blue shirt, the chainsaw hand, everything he did in the earlier films with his look, everything Bruce Campbell brought to this character. He's an icon. He's an icon in horror. He's got his place in comedy horror history, but I also think he has a lot of emotional scenes in the show that people can kind of overlook. A little bit of his deepness to his character. A lot of people just see the liners and the goofiness, but he does really have like a bit of both in him, and he really is one of the greatest. Having a lot of fun with these videos, guys, and just talking about all these different high tier loves from me. I kind of want to maybe even start like a why series of like me talking about why I think something, because my last video was like why I think Art the Clown is a modern day horror icon. This one will be like why I think Ash Williams is one of the greatest good guys in horror history, and I kind of want to start that. I kind of want to maybe start that as like a series or something. But comment below if you guys would be a fan of that, if you guys would want to see that. But thank you guys for watching this video. I'll see you guys next time. Horror 31st. Ow.